And welcome to a Fantasy Fan Sportscast. Tonight, another combo show with HBYOB. So we're going to be talking fantasy sports, maybe a little poker, barbecuing, and home brewing. Stay tuned. And crack them if you got them tonight. Tonight's another combo show on a Fantasy Fan Sportscast. We're joined tonight by my co-host on both my beer cast and my fantasy sports cast. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Not too bad. Fresh off vacation, ready to talk some sports and some brewing. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Just off vacation. So, and I don't think we did anything together last week, did we?
No, we didn't.
There we go. We
got like a whole 2 weeks to catch up on now.
There we go. And the owner of HBYOB and, the sweetheart that brings you this, Joey Brumley, the owner of HBYOB. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well.
We live on YouTube tonight?
Yes, we are live on YouTube and HBYOB.com. Just click on Brewcast.
All right. And Fantasy Fan Sportscast, go to Spreaker. Just type in a fantasy fan. You'll find us. We've actually, in the last few shows, had more downloads, more people interested in listening. And that's our goal, get geared up for the real fantasy sports season, which I think, at least a couple of weeks away from camps opening. Is that correct, Chris? Like somewhere around July 20th or something? Yeah. So I think if we haven't really discussed, I think my goal is probably do at least one more combo show. And then once mini camps really start, me and Chris will get into just a straight fantasy sports cast. Tonight, we are just going to catch up. I got a couple things. First of all, because you said you're on vacation, was this a vacation where the whole family was involved, or you just took off some time and you went away by yourself? Which to me is a real vacation.
That's the real vacation. But no, it was a full-on family vacation. We, my family, so me, the wife, our kids, my sister and her husband, and both my parents.
Wow, family plus.
Yeah. The whole group. We flew out to Seattle to spend the week with my brother because they just had their second child about 4 months ago. So we went out and hung out with them in Seattle for a week.
Holy cow, Seattle. So Chris has been to Seattle, and a month ago, Joey was Hawaii, and a couple days ago, I drove to Eaton. So, that's about 12 miles west. So that's as far west as I've been in the last month or so. So now I don't know if I brought this up, but I was informed yesterday that my daughter did it. I will be going west on opening day of the football season.
There we go.
If my daughter's listening, I have to tell her I just can't wait. I'm really, really excited. But at the same time, it's a fantasy. The first Sunday of football is fantasy day. Right. That's a big day. But instead, I will be spending it in Indianapolis watching my Cincinnati Bengals play the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to draft, a bunch of Colts and a bunch of Bengals just so I can root in person, maybe.
Exactly.
So, I don't know. Joey knows I'm into sports and do all that stuff. I'm not into going. I don't know. I have a bunch of TVs, big screens, high def, surround sound, plenty of beer, which we'll discuss here in a minute what we're drinking. I don't know. I have a lot of fun sitting in my house watching sports. Going to sporting events are just not high on my list. Either one of you. I mean, Joey's not a sports guy, but I've heard. I think you went to the Dragons game once in a while. What is your idea of a fun sporting event?
I was going to say, sports-wise, I would say going to the game would be more fun to me than watching it on TV. However, there are other things like concerts is another one where you go hear a musician play live, and comedians is a huge one. A comedian 3 times as funny when you go see them than if you watch.
Oh, yeah.
I would agree. Again, I got to make sure my daughter's not walking in. She's doing it any minute. Yes. If she said, and I'm not even a live concert person. I go to 2 or 3 concerts every year, probably, which is 2 or 3 more than sporting events that I go to. But yeah, there's something about that where, obviously you can only get the excitement being there live, where the sporting event, I'm not sure the home, especially professional sports, on TV, football, they do it right. I mean, so now, I will be in Indianapolis to watch the Bengals on opening
I will
day.
say, like, you watch poker on TV. We said we talk a little bit about poker, but I can watch poker on TV for hours and hours and hours.
Oh, yeah.
But when you see those audience members at like the WSOP, it's like, shoot me in the head. I could not see myself sitting in the bleachers, not knowing a single hole card, hearing no commentators. I could not in that for hours.
I would agree. I think you hit on the head. That is an event that going and watching does not sound fun. And I think me and Chris talked
golf would be another.
Now this year it's not in Cincinnati, but me and my daughter of 3 or 4 years in a row would go down and watch the professional beach volleyball tournament. But there fun. You get up close. It's not just fun. You're there. I mean, like I said, I've picked up balls and threw them back to the professionals. I've stood beside Olympic gold medal winning people, where when you go to a football game, baseball game, the high end professional sports, they I don't want to say they don't care you're not there, but their life will go on. Where those beach volleyball players, they took time with people, they wanted you to be there, I mean, it was a big part of it.
Another one's like, I've only been once, but a true Top Fuel dragster, watch it on TV, watch it 1 or 2 times. I'm done. You go and actually your chest feels like it's going to explode when those cars take off, and you really get to understand how fast they're really going.
Right.
It's amazing. If you haven't done it, it's something.
But even then, I would agree. But doing it once or twice, I could. Sure. I've done it. I've done it twice. I don't think I could do it more. Same with I've been to multiple NASCAR races, and shoot me in the head too. I've been to the Indy 500 for a long time. There's neat things about it, but it's. Yeah. Oh my God! You go to a NASCAR or an Indy race. It's an all day event because you got to leave at 3 or 4 in the morning. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get home till 10 o'clock at night. The races last 4 hours.
All day drinking,
drinking bud.
But now the good thing is NASCAR is one of the few sports where you can take in a cooler, and they tried to do away with that at a few of the racetracks, and those rednecks raised hell.
I'm sure
so at least when you go to a NASCAR race, you can carry in your own brew and your own cooler. There's rules and regulations to a point, but
no glass.
You can obviously take enough in to get drunk. So, speaking of what you would take into a NASCAR, Joey, I saw you drinking some on a race. So I ask you first, what are you drinking today, and would you take it to a NASCAR race?
So I am drinking today the Sam Adams New England IPA. I have had it. A beer of this style I would probably take to like a NASCAR event. It's not real hoppy. It's going to be very citrusy, so I would take something like that. Now, to take like a stout or a true like a double IPA or something like that, I probably would not take that to a NASCAR event.
You'd be dehydrated or dead, like by the end of the day. One of the two.
Just from the rednecks making fun of you. If you're not cracking Busch Light, if you're not cracking the Busch Light.
What would you drinking, boy?
My homebrew concoction would probably be welcome there.
What is that?
This would happen to be, I shouldn't say home brewed. Apple pie is what a lot of people call it. Let's just say there was some very strong liquor in there. I made it the other day. It's actually really, really tasty. And I typically is it a malt beverage? Is it a whiskey? What is it that you made? Sure, we'll go with that.
All right. Okay. Chris, what do you have tonight? I don't even know if you're drinking again, not drinking shit. I don't know what you're doing these days, but do you have a NASCAR race favorite?
I do not have a NASCAR race favorite. To me, quite honestly, just to fit in, if I were to go to one of those things, I would probably, and this is actually like really coincidental, I'd probably wear this t-shirt that I'm wearing right now
That would fit in the dilly dilly t-shirts. Fit in with NASCAR race.
So I'd wear this t-shirt and probably just grab like, I don't know, like a case of Bud Light just to fit in, and then just drink that all day. But no, I'm not drinking this week because I drank a ton like while I was out west, and then I also have a race next Saturday. So I'm trying to like decompress from all the alcohol as much as possible within reason.
All right. Well, I am drinking something that I drank last weekend. I had a stay-at-home vacation.
Those are the best.
I had a project that I had to get done that didn't get touched because someone else decided that another project was much more important for me to do on my own time. So I partake in that. Here in Ohio, it was 95 degrees every day, hot as hell. And I picked this up on a recommendation from the guy at the IGA here in town. Has he has a big selection. And to me, this isn't even what I would say, like some major craft beer, but to me, I found it much better. And I thought this is definitely, I could drink this in NASCAR, except I definitely would get made fun of. But on a hot day, it was very refreshing. And that's the Rattler grapefruit malt beverage. I should say only, I think it's 3.6% alcohol. So it's not real heavy, very refreshing. It
sounds like a shandy or something.
Yeah.
Yes. But, I'm not even a big grapefruit guy. There's a hint of grapefruit in it, but on a 95-degree day when you're out working in the heat.
Yeah, that's lawnmower beer.
It is definitely a lawnmower beer with a little bit of flavor, though. So I recommend it, and that's what I'm cracking tonight because, it's a little warm in here. So,
there you go.
But I did. I stayed home, worked in the heat, got up at 6:30 every morning, did some work because by noon I was dripping. It was so damn hot and miserable.
That's what I heard. I heard it was hot while we were gone. It was like 80s and semi-cloudy, like out on the West Coast. So it wasn't too hateful.
So were you out there for the 4th of July festivals or anything like that? Did you see fireworks?
Yeah, actually from my brother's place, we could see fireworks, and then we were driving by like one of the local breweries, and then we could see some fireworks like out that way as well. So it was, I mean, there were fireworks going off at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, which was somewhat annoying but it kept the kids up. So I don't know.
Well, this is going to bring me, because I think we got a good, well, let me do this first. Joey, did you go look at fireworks anywhere in our area? Did you go to a fireworks display?
Yes, I saw Delco Park's fireworks this year.
All right. And
those were actually on
my local town has their own, and they actually do a pretty good job.
They do.
But this is the number one debate I'm going to have, and that is, first of all, take in mind of let's say at least you're going to travel 20 minutes to get to these fireworks displays. What is your two opinions on, do you need to have 30 minutes of fireworks? So would you vote for 30 minutes? Would you vote for 30 minutes of decent fireworks or 15 minutes of let's blow this shit up?
15 minutes by far.
Yes.
I am voting for that also.
Yep.
Just let's start the grand finale at the beginning. I don't need those great. I don't even mind. You can throw in a few big ones even, but just let's blow shit up.
Exactly.
Well, I will say that nowadays, because as a kid, I don't remember fireworks being able to spell shit. And like the firework display we seen, they actually would say USA, which was the A was upside down most of the time. But
somebody got fired.
But that was pretty cool. But I agree.
You can't come back to the fireworks next year.
Blow them up, USA, one of those palm tree looking ones, and then just blow them all up. Show us one or two of all the different unique varieties that you have, and then just let them go.
Yeah, the cool ones that make like because my wife, she likes the ones that make like the big starburst. Like she likes those, and like the kids like the ones that are all the different colors or whatever. I just like the one that makes the biggest boom. Just give me that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the Dennis the Menace blow shit up kind of school of thought with it. But don't get me wrong, the ground displays. Those are pretty cool. But yeah, 30 minutes, because that's kind of the way I felt this year. Even my kids kids get bored pretty quick anyway, but 30 minutes.
Not only that,
and
people need to remember it's an analog thing. Kids struggle with any analog thing that lasts more than 10 minutes anyway. So if you're going to take them to something that's not digital or plugged in or has batteries, get this shit up in the air, light it up, big booms, let it go. As a parent, I'm fine that I drove 20 minutes, sat down for 15 cool ass minutes and go home. I don't need that 30-minute display anymore in my life.
This year in Ohio, like you said, Mark, it was hot as hell too. So you're sitting there sweating, you're beating traffic, and same thing, and then when the fireworks are done, you're fighting traffic we sat stuck where we were at for 30 minutes before we even got moving in traffic. So it is just one of those things where, I don't know. Even I think I'm guilty of the analog thing. I mean, if after about 5 minutes you lose my attention span.
Right. I think of as a nation now, most people our age and younger are slowly, anything that's analog is hard to hold our attention. So I just think it's, and some people call it the MTV generation. Some people just call it, the digital, generation. It's just, you want to see things
entitled generation.
Right. Well, entitled to get what they want. And if they want 30-minute display, that's what they want. But,
as much money as those cities spend to light off all the fireworks, I guess it should be a 30-minute show. Don't get me wrong. But
that's the other reason I'm bringing it up. I am on a committee where we kind of vote on this type thing. In our town, it cost us $15,000 for that 30-minute display.
I would have guessed more. I've heard some cities do
$15,000, and that's a deal. And they've already told us that next year it's going up probably to $16,500 to $17,000.
I've been to West. I've been to your neck of the woods fireworks. They are pretty impressive, though.
They're very good. We have a big company coming.
All of my wife's family went there and partaked in, and we just didn't want to make the 45-minute drive.
We are actually at the low end of the size display that the company we use will even do. So they do big events. This is the low end, but I don't know. We're bringing it up in a meeting about, should we do it? And unfortunately, half the committee is like, well, people drive all the way. They don't want to just sit and be done in 10 or 15 minutes. I'm sorry. I look at the other way around, again, back to going to a NASCAR race on TV. 500 miles seems like an okay idea. In person, shit, 100 miles. Let's get this thing over with. Take the generator, take the governors off those carburetors, let them go to 240 miles an hour instead of keeping them at around 210.
I want some crashes.
And let's get it over at 100 miles. I'm just as good with that myself.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was it. I kind of just had a little note, just curious to know your opinion. So you both would be fine taking your family, sitting down somewhere, and at the end of a half hour going, that was pretty cool, even though it didn't last very long. Because you can't afford, unfortunately, that's the point. It's so expensive. You can't afford to do 30 minutes of finale. You know what I'm saying? So because you're paying per shell. So the key is, you tell the guy, buddy, hit your key button. I want automatic, not semi-automatic. Hit that button a bunch.
So let's get this thing on the road.
And let's face it, the entertainment value of fireworks loses its luster for every 100 feet away you are from the fireworks themselves. Like we were maybe not even a half a mile from the fireworks, and when you see them and in your perspective, they only look like that big. You're like, this kind of sucks. We should have fought the crowd and got a little closer.
After the first one, you're just like, oh, that's pretty cool. After that,
what's nice?
There were people firing off fireworks next to us while they were going off. I'm like, those are almost more impressive.
Right. Hey, a sparkler 2 inches from your face.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Well, that's the funny thing. When you drag kids out to go see fireworks and stuff, they would rather just play with the especially little kids. They'd rather play with sparklers than even watch fireworks anyway. Versus 1 year, me and my wife, we truly took the kids. They were still kind of little, and we were, you could feel the boom, boom. And my kids just screamed and cried the whole time because they were so little. We were like, well, this was a mistake. We didn't quite get that. We didn't quite get it right.
Now, when I was younger, me and Mrs. Easy went out to, we were down in Florida over the 4th of July one year and out on the beach. That was kind of neat. You know, people lined the beach and they shot them off from a ship, you know, out a little ways. That was kind of cool. Yeah. Now, here in our little town, we have a, you know, the word known for, but, you know, we have a hill. You know, it's pretty big, all grassy. That's, you know, for sledding. It's in our park. And that fills up for the 4th because it's a hill by a river, and then they shoot them off from the other side of the river. So we're pretty close, you know, when they go off. So it's pretty neat. I just don't think it needs to be 30 minutes long. That's all.
Well, you know, there's a lot of things that don't need to be 30 minutes long. So I mean, you do it once a year. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, but that doesn't mean it can't be better. You know, let's like I said, blow this shit up.
Well, I can have a beer while I'm doing it or while I'm watching it. I don't care.
I was going to say, how many beers you've had also influences how tolerable you are to the heat and the 30 minutes of fireworks.
Exactly.
Right.
This year, I don't think I had any in me, so I was just like, all right, blow them all up. Let's go home.
Yeah.
Right. I kept saying to the family, is that the finale?
Only because we were going to talk about barbecuing, and I think I already was told one of you has a food issue. Because I was on vacation, I cooked and grilled all week, except on the 4th. My family, we ended up spending the day at the festival itself and eating food truck food and vendor food, which is something we'd never done before. So I did not grill on the 4th. Either one of you, Chris, you were on vacation, or Joey, what kind of barbecuing did we do? Or did we do any? What kind of food did we cook?
So that is a good question, because I tried calling you and you didn't answer. I had a cooking question. I smoked a brisket for 4th of July for the family.
Okay.
However, I was too lazy to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning on the 4th of July and spend half the day dicking around with smoking a brisket. So I smoked it the day before. My question was, okay, I put it on the grill at 8 a.m. on the 3rd. Okay. It was done at 8 o'clock p.m. on the 3rd. So we're
talking about a 12-hour cook.
Yes.
Okay.
So my question is now, which is why I called you, do I just wrap it in foil, which is what I did, stick it in the refrigerator after it sat and rested on my kitchen counter for a couple of hours because I never cut it up, and put it in the refrigerator? It got cold, and then the 4th of July at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we stuck it in the oven to get it hot again while it was still wrapped in the foil, bring it back up to, you know, heat temperature, cut it up, slice it up, serve it to the family. That was what I did. My question is, what if I just turned my oven to, say, 150, 175 and just stuck that bastard in there and it stayed in there till tomorrow? Do you think, as far as bacteria, as far as health reasons goes, taste reasons goes, dryness?
I think health reasons you're fine if it's over 135, 139 degrees. From what I understand, I think if you have a thermometer and that meat is put somewhere, I think as long as it's back to, you know, big piece of meat at a motel thing, they got those big heat lamps on, and they'll put a thermometer in there, and you'll see that thermometer will say like 140. So it's keeping it warm, but it's not cooking anything.
I'm still not guessing it's sitting there for close to 24 hours. No,
that's true. Now, if you're asking me, I have never done that, what you did. So if you're asking me, I had a choice. I personally would have cut mine.
Would you have refrigerated it?
I would have cut it, and I would have refrigerated it
for 12 hours
with as much juice. Yeah, because I just think now, because in my mind, and I'm not telling you this is the way, I'm just thinking out loud what I would have done. I think the reason I would have cut it is it probably wouldn't had to, once it was time to then warm it up, the smaller pieces cut would get to temperature much quicker with the less chance of it drying out. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning,
no, that's so. I kind of did what you had said, was a combination of both. I kept the meat whole so it had a chance to just keep all those juices in it. Then I stuck it in the oven for, I don't know, about half hour, 45 minutes, just because meat, in my opinion, is easier to cut and shred when it's at least a little bit warm. Then I cut it up, wrapped it back in the foil, stuck it back in the oven for like another 30, 40 minutes to get it hot again. So I kind of did a combination of both. I felt if I cut it, because back to the meat only sat there for an hour or two, and I felt by cutting it up then and there, I would just have a cutting board full of juice. And so I left the meat whole, and I've done this twice now. The main question I'm asking is, say, because I've done this twice now. I did it for a graduation party, and now I did it for 4th of July. It's easier for me back to, I don't want a bunch of guests to come over and go, yeah, we're going to have brisket and pulled pork, but kind of fucked up on my timing on it. So you guys, we got to wait for my meat to get to 195 degrees. So stick around. And so what I've been doing is making it the day before so that I know it's perfectly fine. Just like the graduation party, we had roasters and crock pots. Do I just throw it in a crock pot and keep it hot for another 12 hours so I can go to bed and get a good night's sleep? That way, you know, when you're enjoying the event, you're not all red eyed because you woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I can tell you though, I've been places where we had long days where I had pulled pork available the whole day. It'll dry out in a crock pot.
But see, that's the point. What I did was when I took it off the grill, I wrapped it in foil.
Sure.
And I just would have put in the crock pot or the oven or wherever wrapped in foil. You're saying it would still probably dry out?
I mean, no, I'm not. I mean, again, now I'm going to ask you. You say you've done it twice. Does it turn out okay? I mean, if you tell me it turns out okay, I've just never done it. I am the opposite of you. I have, because I've done it. I have no problem. Don't get me wrong. I have a problem, but if I need to, I will get up and put a brisket in at 2 or 3 in the morning, and then go back to bed. I've done it. Just knowing that worst case scenario, because I'm pretty good. I feel that the closest I've ever done to what you've said is I've gotten stuff done at, let's say, noon, and we're not going to eat till 3. I will wrap that and put it in a cooler. So its own heat is all that keeps it hot. I've done that with a turkey. I've done that with 3 or 4 chickens. But I realize that's only sitting for 3 or 4 hours, not 12 or 15.
Sure. I was going to say, I think that's where we're confused is I actually refrigerated it.
Right.
And I would say by the time that meat got cold and heated back up was a span of 6-7 hours. Right. But I didn't want to just to sit there and stay at room temperature. However, we went to a family reunion in Texas and a guy made briskets. He made them the same thing, like you had said, Mark. He made them like a day or so ahead of time, wrapped them in foil and piled them up in a cooler and brought it the next day. Those meats never got chilled. Right. They just sat in a cooler hot for 24 hours that way. Now
you put hot water. You put hot
water like 7,000 times.
Yeah, I actually have had trouble where ribs kept cooking in a cooler, because you pour hot water in the cooler, get the cooler, hot. Then you put some rags that were soaked in hot water down the bottom. Then you put your foiled ribs in top there. You stack 10 ribs in a cooler, put a few more towels on top, shut that cooler. It will stay hot. Unfortunately, I can't say 10 hours because I've never done it, but it does stay hot for 4 or 5 hours.
Well, see, here's the thing. Here's the reason why I called you. Here's what I've got a sous vide that I got for Christmas, I think 2 years ago. Right. It's never left the box. So I was thinking, and I also have a vacuum sealer. So what I thought about doing was putting the brisket in a vacuum sealer while it was still hot, vacuum sealing it.
Water temp at 140 and let it sit in there.
Wherever.
Okay.
My question is, back to health reasons, is that going to hurt you? I was feeding the whole family. I was feeding like more than just my family. So I was like, I'm not risking it. I'm sticking in the refrigerator. If it dries out because I did it this way, it is what it is.
At that temperature, it shouldn't.
Right. People listen and let us know. I'd be curious because I've never done it. Now back to my original question. Maybe I don't know if I missed the answer. Did it turn out fine? I mean, did everyone eat it? And did it taste like brisket that you would have just taken off the grill an hour and a half before?
Personally speaking, I think brisket, pulled pork, most meats that I smoke minus ribs, most meats that don't have the bone in them, like pulled pork. Well, pulled pork has a bone in it, but you pull it out. But most of those, I actually, in my opinion, almost turn out better as seconds than as they do fresh off the smoker. Right. Maybe that's just in my head, but that's the reason why I make brisket so frequently is because we eat every stitch of the leftovers. They do not get wasted. We make sure we mark on the calendar. If you don't eat it by this date, put it in the freezer. We freeze it.
Sure.
To me, brisket and pulled pork are a lot of smoked meats reheat fantastic. That's the reason why I make them so often versus like pizza and shit like that. If we don't eat it that day, it pretty much hits the trash can. So to me, it was just one of those, like I said, back to, I smoked it for 12 hours at like 225. It's one of those things where do I just keep it? And that's the thing. Do I just keep it hot?
Well, we've had that discussion before. I'm a saucer.
And do ways to keep the moisture in. Because I've even heard you say, that's why I called you. You did in the sous vide, you did hard-boiled eggs you put in there for like 24 hours or something ridiculous.
It's not 24 hours, but at the same time, see, sous vide is usually the sous vide though is usually the opposite for meats. You put them in there not cooked, you get them to the 65 degrees internally you want, and then they can stay at that temperature for a long time and never cook anymore. Then you throw them back on the grill or the smoker for just a few hours, to get a grilled, taste to them. But obviously, yeah. I mean, there's multiple. I've seen recipes and I've seen people do briskets and things like that in sous vide. But and I've even seen them do pork butts. They do a big pork butt, big bag. They put it in there raw. They set that thing to, for that. And unfortunately, sous vide temperatures are weird. There's some odd temperature. If you do it'll say for pulled pork, set it to 172. And let it, and it can cook there for 48 hours. And then the key there is it is truly done, and it is a pulled pork texture. It just obviously doesn't have smoke or grill marks or like that. So then some people then will take it out and then just throw it on the grill for an hour. So I've seen it done with ribs. I've seen it done with all that. Now, I admit, to me, it doesn't seem, being a smoking person or a person of barbecues, that just seems to defeat the purpose of what we do. But
yeah, I'm just telling you, the day, as much as I work now and time and everything, to me, to wake up at 3 a.m., which I have no problem doing, smoking a brisket or whatever, but then having guests over or whatever and just being so doggone tired just doesn't seem worth it, versus it reheats fairly well. So just to make the day, but a day, or I mean, I guess shit, for what I did, I might as well made it a week ahead of time. It didn't really matter.
Well, true.
And that's my point. It didn't really matter if I made it way ahead of time. I still believe
brisket guy. But I do pulled pork. Frozen pulled pork comes out when I pull that out of the freezer and open that bag. You can smell smoke come out of it. I mean,
it's still better than any store-bought. It's still better than any store-bought you can get.
I agree.
And, that's a thing for me is I guess the last thing before we stay on, grilling too long is, since I did that method, what keeps me from just smoking one whole now? Because what I used to do in the past was I would get home from work, fire up the grill, I would smoke it for like 3-4 hours, and then I would just turn my oven to like 225, throw it in the oven, go to bed, call it a day. The problem I had with that is I got a good smoke ring, I got good smoke flavor, but you just don't get that like just jet black char look on the outside of the brisket when you do it that way. Flavor wise, there wasn't a huge difference. Just the texture on the outside was slightly different when I did it that method. Because they say after 4 hours, the meat takes about as much smoke as it's gonna take anyway.
I've heard it's a temperature. I've heard it's about 120 to 130. Once your meat hits that, it's not going to absorb any more smoke.
Yeah, typically that's in like the 3-hour range or something like that.
I took that and tried to adapt it and make it easier for me, so I wasn't staying up all night or I wasn't waking up too early, and I just felt like the results weren't as good. Versus if I, like nowadays, I feel it's more worth it. Just say, hey, I wake up at 8 a.m. anyway. Just fire up the grill, throw it on at 9 a.m. by the time you get the grill the smoker fired up.
I know what kind of smoker you have.
And then before I go to bed, I just take it off, wrap it up, stick it in the refrigerator, and we just aren't eating it that day. But like I said, I never felt like flavor wise that was the best for me, because I truly don't feel like brisket reheated or pulled pork really suffered from being refrigerated after it was made. Versus, like I said, I'm not like tooting my own horn by this, but you take me to any of the barbecue places, I feel my pulled pork or brisket, in my opinion, because I catered it to my taste buds, it's where that's like same thing as homebrew. It tasted just as good to me, better than if I got store bought. Because we were like we were going to cater a party, or we were providing food for a party that we had. So my wife was just like, Joey, you're working. Well, I'll just call City Barbecue, I think is where she called. And it was like they wanted $12 a pound for brisket.
Lord.
When we bought it at the store for like $3 a pound. So, I mean, to me, it's like, well, I'll just make it ahead of time. I think mine tastes better anyway. So that's what we ended up doing.
Yeah, I'd do that.
Well, and I go, and again, I know your smoking device. I have multiple smoking devices. When I'm doing an all night cook, I don't use our Acorn grill. The temperature fluctuates a little too much for me. So I'll use my big gas grill, gun safe type smoker, because that I can set the burner on low and I know it's never going to really go over,
Sure.
210, so I can go to bed and sleep knowing it's going to cook all night, never get over 210 versus on the Acorn grill. If the wind picks up at the middle of the night and even though you have a little crack there, if the breeze is now an extra 20 miles an hour than it was before I went to bed, the temperature will rise because there's more, or vice versa. You get it set based on a breeze and that breeze goes away and then your temperature drops.
I usually have the opposite problem. I would wake up I would set my alarm like every hour or every 2 hours and go out there and I would start dropping my temperature. So I'd get opening those vents. And then I'd come a couple hours later and all of a sudden it was shit. Now it's I would chase it a little bit more. Usually it was more me trying to keep it hot enough was the problem, because then once your charcoal goes out, then you're fucked. You got to, restart over. So you played. And the next thing you know, you go, well, fuck it. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm just staying up. And next thing you know, you've had 3 hours of sleep and you've been up for, all these hours. And my wife like, are you going to eat dinner? I'm like, no, I'm not hungry.
Beer has caffeine in it.
All night look at the damn thing. You're not hungry. Like, yeah, well.
Beer has caffeine in it. That'll just keep rolling for a little longer.
Now, I will say, hey, I will tell you though, and I think I told you, I finally bought one of those good thermometers that has multiple, reads on it, one for the meat, one for the thing, and but mine is wireless and it has the alarm. It's right by my bed. It will beep when it hits a certain temperature, high or low, and it'll wake me up. So I've gotten things that make it easier. But
I thought the same thing, and so I bought one of those. Mine wasn't propane. I think yours is propane, Mark. I bought one of the electric ones. Right. And the problem I had with those the food just didn't turn out nearly as good in flavor, because what would happen was I would put the wood chips in the wood chipping basket, and it had the pan for the water and all that good shit, and it would just burn up all my wood chips or lump in no time, and the meat tasted like it baked in an oven. I never got the flavor nearly as good when I actually used lump charcoal and added wood chips to it.
No, wood chips my gas one has 2 wood chip things, and I have to rotate.
That's what I'm saying. You're still babysitting it. Is the point I'm trying to make. You're still babysitting it.
Exact same thing. You're only babysitting to get to that 120 degrees. Then once the smoking's done, I know I dump the wood chip things. I put the burner down to low. It gets me to 210, and I go to bed. So
that's the same. So I guess essentially we're doing the same thing. We get the meat after 4 hours or so, and then I throw it in the oven. You just keep it in your outdoor device. Same thing.
I keep it in my outdoor oven. So
so we're kind of doing the same thing,
right? So I added something though to my. I should have taken a picture. I added something to my outside. People who have seen my deck laugh because there's 5 grills sitting out there, but I added an outdoor sink to my grilling area. Genius. It is cool as hell. My wife thought that was dumb, and even she will now use it. I mean,
to be able to wash your hands and whatnot after you've dealt with all that stuff.
I ran a secondary hose under my deck and wire tied it up, and you don't even see the hose or anything for it. And then it's got a drain hose that goes down, and obviously there's no hot water. Now you could boil hot water and pour it into it, and it'll sit in there, to do stuff. And then when you're done, you let that drain out, and then the cold water to rinse. But it is cool as hell to have running water right beside the grills. So
one of my motivation factors, I get so pissed off on my kids because I tell them all the time in or out, because they'll go outside, they'll come inside, they'll go outside, they'll come inside. And then a lot of times I like to grill out on really, really hot days. So my air conditioner, so my oven isn't and stove isn't baking my whole house. So I'll try to cook my whole meal outside. It's one of my main motivation reasons for sweating my ass off outside. And the next thing I just put the charcoal in there, so my hands are full of charcoal dust. I go inside, open the door, wash my hands. Oh, now the meat's ready. Go outside, put the meat on, go inside, wash my hands. So and same thing, or you'll use a kitchen utensil, you do whatever. I've actually researched in getting an outdoor. Same thing.
This is the real thing.
Hand with raw meat, because a lot of times, especially like steaks and stuff, I'll just take my finger, and because it's my family eating them, I'll just poke at them to see kind of the doneness of them and stuff. Go inside, wash my hands. It's like one of those things where, it's like I just complain at my kids all day for going in and out. And here I am trying to save energy. And I've had my back door wide open about, I don't know, a good 15, 20 minutes.
I now have a refrigerator outside. I have a refrigerator outside. I have a sink now. I've got all the things. And I bought that inductive burner. I think we talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That I got on an Amazon deal. I sit that outside now. And that does boil water real quick. Gets hot as hell. It does work. You said it didn't work with most pans. The good thing is it works with the 3 I needed it to work with, which are just big kettle type pots I had.
Need to be magnetic. That's it.
Like last week, I had a big thing of water in there and it was boiling 12 dozen corn while I was doing my steaks. And I had but I keep the cheap beer outside. There's always Budweiser or Beast or Milwaukee's Best in the outdoor refrigerator. I figure if someone's going to steal my beer, they can steal my cheap beer. And only because that's all, back to what we say, that's all the lawnmower beer. If it's really hot and I'm outside barbecuing, trust me, I usually grabbing a Budweiser's usually what I want anyway. But let's roll this into. I was going to roll it into home brewing because I'm guessing the same way. We're talking about. I don't know if the word shortcut is right or a long cut on how to deal with this brisket when you don't have time. In home brewing, this just brings it up to me. Are there shortcuts? Are there things in home brewing where you go, this, I need to brew today, but I only have this much time. So I can do this, but tomorrow I can finish it. Are there shortcuts and or tips and tricks, or pretty much when you commit to brewing, starting your mash or where you pretty much, once you hit the start button, you have to go through with it?
So I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're fine, Chris. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I don't think that you have to commit to a specific, like, if it normally takes you, I don't know, from once you get all your buckets and stuff out to, after you're done pitching and like cleaning everything up, it's like, say it's like 7 hours, like every single time you do it for whatever reason. I don't necessarily think that every single time that you brew, you're going to have to commit to those 7 hours. There are, I guess, a few things that you can switch up. Like, for instance, once you get into the boil process, like where you're actually like looking to reduce your wort down to like your final volume, and you're looking to add in your hops and all that good stuff. You can shorten that. Like, typically it's an hour long boil, but you can shorten it down to what, Joe, you've done 20 minutes, half hour. Yeah. I mean, you can, there are ways that you can cut some of that down if you really want to, because as we discussed, I forget which week that we discussed doing like just dry hopping or hops additions in general. I mean, there are ways that you can get enough of the alpha acids out of a particular hop strain so that it can get to the flavor profile that you're looking for. So if that's something that you want to do, that's a way that you can kind of cut everything down. And then the same thing for the mash. I think there's some ways that you can also kind of cut that time frame down. A lot of folks, though, they can be kind of particular about how long it takes in order for the starch conversion to have, because I know some folks that when they start brewing and they still to this day brew, they like to use the the iodine test in order to test for full conversion. Even though it does give you false positives, they will wait like the full time period, which can be like somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours for you to like completely make sure that you converted all your starches over to sugars. I don't necessarily recommend that, but again, if you're fine with the sugar content that's in there after that's actually started to happen, then again, that's another way that you can kind of shorten those things down. So there are like quote unquote shortcuts to get around spending 5, 6, 7 hours every time that you brew. It's just, I think once you start doing it a bit more often and you learn about some of those things, and I think it's also a level of comfort as well, because there are some folks that once they do them, they expect to hit these targets, they expect to see these things happen. So that's what lets them know that they can move on to the next step. So if you're not comfortable with doing it, you're going to say, well, I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to make sure that these things happen so that I can continue on with whatever I was going to be doing next. So again, I think it's a level of comfort, a level of experience, but there are ways that you can cut some of that stuff down.
All right. Joey, do you have a comment on that? Or I guess what would be steps you could do to fine tune the time. I'm guessing back to what we were just talking about smoking or barbecuing, you can do certain things ahead of time. So can you, I guess, obviously and I'm just giving my amateur thought first, obviously you can plan ahead by having your sanitation, your cleaning and your stuff organized. That could actually be done a week in advance or whatever in most cases, or at least a day in advance. So you're not doing that on the day that you're going to actually do the brewing. But what other shortcuts, what other things can you do ahead of time that would allow you to cut down either on the time, to help you, or is it just one of those things? Again, once it starts boiling, if you want to get a certain thing, I know, that you're just kind of committed.
So there are, I guess first I'm going to compare the brisket conversation we had or the barbecue conversation we had. I've heard a lot of people, I've never done it personally, but a lot of people who actually, all grain brewers, they will do their mash the night before they're going to brew. Go to bed.
Okay.
Then the next morning, heat up water, drain off what they had, in the mash, start to boil. Oh. Bob's your uncle. So you didn't necessarily, of all things, in all honesty, you added a shit ton of time to it. But as far as your time goes, a lot of people kind of shorten that down by splitting it amongst 2 days, kind of like the brisket conversation.
Gotcha.
So that works. Now, if you want to talk,
and obviously sleeping time, you don't have to count. If it's doing it while you're in bed, those 8 hours don't count. That's a good idea.
I've heard a lot of people who are extract brewers who go, I don't have 5 hours to block off to do all grain brew. This is a perfect way that they could do that, is say, but before you go to bed, throw in your mash bar, stir it up, go to bed. Now you've only got maybe a 3-hour brew day. So that is one way it was still 5 hours, but you split it amongst 2 days. So another thing you can do is what I do, like Chris had said, I haven't boiled beer for 60 to 90 minutes, like most kits will tell you, or most instructions will tell you, for probably close to 3 months now. I think 40 minutes has been like the longest I've been brewing beers. Quite honestly, I don't taste that much of a difference. You're not going to get as much efficiency, and I won't hang up on that too long, but they say when you start your mash, like 90% of your mash sugars get converted in like the first 15 minutes. So that's another thing I do to shorten my brew day down. I haven't mashed grains for an hour, probably close to a year. I shorten my time down. I shorten my mash time down to say like 40 minutes. I've shortened my brew time down to 40 minutes, which means I've saved a collective, just on those two things, 40 minutes right there. So, and not to mention, a lot of times beers, another way I save time is people say you got to chill your beer to say 65 degrees, because that's what I'm going to ferment at. I use the grain father quite a bit now. I turn the counterflower on full bore, throw it in the fermenter. Yes. Does it get to my fermenter above 80 or above 80 degrees? Yes. I then stick it in my chest freezer. So I cut my chilling time down by half, and then I will stick it into my fermenter and not pitch my yeast till the next day. So I'm actually making starters for my beer the day I'm brewing, because I'm not pitching the beer till the next day when my beer in my fermentation chamber regulated itself. A lot of people say, oh, your beer can get infected. I've done it dozens of times. I've never had an infected batch of beer from it. So those variants right there is how I brew now, because I don't have 5 hours to block off. I've been knocking out 5-gallon all grain beers in the same amount of time a lot of people take to do extract brews. Using those steps, do I recommend them to customers? Do I say this is the way you brew, award-winning beer? No, it works for me. I like the results. And quite honestly, have I lost efficiency? Yes. But we've had this conversation with customers quite a bit. I just throw in an extra $1.50 worth of grains and kind of make up for the loss. So, I mean, it's one of those things where I lose a little bit of efficiency. I probably spend a little bit more money, but I gain a couple hours of my time by doing it that way. And so that's just the way I do it now.
All right. Now, but I've asked, have you ever done the overnight thing? Have you ever done your mash overnight?
I've never done that.
Neither have I. That'd be interesting, though.
I don't see how there would be any adverse effects from it. I mean,
right. It's just grains in.
You're still going to bring it
in water.
You get infected. I mean, you're going to bring it to oil afterwards.
Right, because even
So-
if it does, so say if you did it, I mean, just thinking about it, like hypothetically. So let's say if you did it like 10 o'clock or something that evening before you went to bed, and then you check it in the morning when you get up. Let's say like at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
I mean, at most, how much is it going to drop within that 10 hours?
Maybe
I mean,
3 degrees.
Yeah, I was about to
Honestly,
say.
in a cooler like that.
I mean,
Maybe
at
5.
worst case scenario, you're talking maybe like a 10-degree drop. It's not going to infect anything as long as the lid stays closed and nothing gets in there. You should be
here's the
fine.
part. Your starch conversion already took effect. So a lot of people would say,
Right.
well, if you wake up the next morning and it's 120 degrees, say you made a stout, you're not going to get that malty flavor from it. It's going to ferment and dry. No, you started at 155 or 154, 150, whatever you started at.
Right.
You've already got that starch conversion. It isn't hurting anything. The only place you're going to lose time is instead of starting with wort at 150, say 4 degrees, you're now starting with wort at 120 degrees. That slight amount of time is going to take it. The slight amount of time is going to take it from 120 to 150, which we all know getting it in the hundreds takes like that. Once you break 200 is when it seems like you sit there and stare at the brew pot waiting for your hot break for forever.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Because you know as soon as you walk away from it, it's going to boil over. And getting it from that 200 to 212 is where the buffer of time really takes place. So 120 to 150, you're talking, I would say 5 minutes max, even on a slow, electric system. So
Yeah.
I don't think but it splits your brew day amongst 2 days. Like I said, it's a genius idea. I've just never personally done it.
I'm gonna have to try that, to be quite honest with you, just to see how it works out. I mean, because that would be, at least for me, yeah, that'd be a great, a decent time saver if I could just do that the night beforehand. And so then the only thing I have to worry about the next day is sparge and then boil, and then that's it.
I've even had customers come in and say they mashed and sparged that night, put it in their boil kettle, and just put the lid on it. Because we're going to bring it to boil anyway.
Right.
So then they split a brew day amongst two. So then the next day they're taking it, say it dropped down to 100 degrees.
Yeah.
They just bring it to a boil, add their hops, chill it down. They've knocked out a brew day in 2 hours.
Right.
Now, if it simmered all night, would that be different? Meaning by not adding heat to it, is that what you have to do, or could you even let it simmer at 120 degrees and then in the morning bring it to the boil?
I'm talking for
you just want it to sit at room temperature.
Well, most people who have cooler systems, which is what a lot of us probably either currently use, or I don't know, now the demographic of what people use, what systems. But if you throw it in a cooler, it's tough to. There's not really a good way to let it quote unquote simmer. Yes, I've got a grain bottle. I can just dial it at 150, whatever, and just let it sit there technically indefinitely. But obviously having that unit, a nice unit plugged in like that, doing that just seems like it'd be kind of hard on the heating.
I guess what made me think that is it's back to the sous vide thing. That sous vide thing, I can set a temperature on that sous vide,
sure,
and it's going to rotate that water and keep that water at whatever temperature I set it at.
I would say, like on a system like the Grainfather, probably the most adverse effect you would have by doing it is I probably would turn my pump off, just because you probably would burn up a pump letting it run for 12 hours, 24 hours. You'd probably burn up a pump. It's got to be too hard on a pump to go through that. Now, the heating element that's just kind of pulsating every now and then, I'd say you'd be good there. If you have a recirculating system, I would just recommend turning off the pump.
All right. Well, then we've spent 53 minutes and we've talked no fantasy sports, which is going to piss off all our regular listeners. But because normally I end our question of the day with home brewing at the end, but I'm going to bring that in because it kind of deals with what we deal with now. The question of the day is a customer asked, are there differences in brewing time based on the amount of beer I'm making? This gentleman particularly has been doing 1 gallon volume, and he wants to know if he moves up to 5 or 10 gallons, does he have to plan or set aside even more time? So that's the question, and I don't know how it fits in what we're talking now, but since we're talking time, is there a big difference from somebody who's used to brewing 1 gallon at a time? What's going to change time wise for them if they bump up to 5 or 10 gallons?
So brew time, there will be a slight amount of time difference. It's going to be like we talked about before. The main difference is getting 1 gallon of water to a boil will happen much quicker than 5 gallons of water to a boil. Depending on your system would differentiate that. Now, if you're talking like the person who wrote me in, or actually was a customer in the store that asked me the question, he was talking fermentation time. That whether, to my best knowledge, whether you're making 1 gallon, and this is what I told him, whether you're making 1 gallon or 100 gallons, that time should not change whatsoever as long as you're pitching the proper amount of yeast. So him stepping up to, he goes, well, it told my beer kit instructions told me to let it ferment for 2 weeks. If I do a 5-gallon batch, do I have to let it ferment for 10 weeks? And the answer is no. I mean,
right.
Just
yep. Right. The fermentation is pretty much the same.
Yep. No matter how big the volume you're doing.
And then in most cases, if he's, carbonating and all that after that, that's all the same too. You just got more bottles to fill or something like that. Yep. So the only time change is boiling and cooling. Yep. I mean, it's the heating and the cooling of the water or the liquid that is the difference.
The only difference. And like I said, that's why I always recommend people doing 5-gallon batches over 1-gallon batch, because I tell people you're virtually going to invest the same amount of time and you can brew twice as much beer for the same price. So it just get into 5-gallon batches, because if you drink any amount of beer, 1 gallon will go down pretty quick, and the couple of hours it took you to brew it, the couple of weeks for it to ferment, and the couple of weeks for it to store in the bottles, and 3 days later, after a couple buddies are over, you're like, oh shit. So
I'm gonna go brew again.
I typically recommend people just get to 5-gallon batches.
The first Mr. Beer kit I had, I think it did just over a gallon. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. One, you want some, and then you want your buddies to taste it. You're right. What you learn in a hurry, a gallon's just bullshit. So, but hey, if it gets you started, it gets you started. So
anything that gets your feet wet and gets you in the door. The person who actually asked me the question, he was talking about, he's like, I just don't want, it reminded me of me. He's like, I'm not buying store-bought ever again. And I'm like, then you need to step it up from 1-gallon batches, because
hell yeah.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you're not a big drinker, there's don't get me wrong, there's some customers that say I might have 1 or 2 beers a week max. So I'm happy and content doing the 1-gallon batches, and that's great. Go for it. Like I said, it's just more economical to do it 5 gallons.
All right. That's good. All right. So we obviously went a long time on barbecuing and some home brewing, which is fine. That's why we're doing these. There's not a whole lot going on in the fantasy or the sports world. I have a couple things in sports. Chris, are you a Wimbledon guy? Are you
I've been watching.
You have been watching? I watched it on vacation. Again, last week being on vacation, it would get so damn hot by noon. I was sweating. That's when I would come in and, maybe drink a few of my Rattlers, which is to me, I'm sorry, it's just very refreshing beer. And then I would turn on the Wimbledon and watch some of that. Yeah. Some good matches, a lot of upsets in the women's side. I found it pretty interesting. So you enjoy watching then the Wimbledon. Will you watch it this weekend when the finals? Do you get up early in the morning? And
I'll try to. I don't know if we'll make it that far, but I don't mind watching. I've been watching them going to the gym during the day, because it's great, because I go at I try to go to the gym around 11:30, noon, something like that. And the TVs at the gym that I go to, I'll get one of 3 things. I'll either get Sports Center, Wimbledon, baseball. They'll have the Reds game on if they're playing that day. Or they'll have one of the reruns of some poker tournament or something like that. So I'll be able to watch anything that we're typically interested in while I'm running.
All right, I've enjoyed it. I always the Sunday morning at Wimbledon, for the men's finals, Saturday for the women's. I always try to get up and I'll watch. Most of it, obviously, when there's USA people in it, I'm more dedicated to watching the whole thing.
Yep.
It just depends who's in it and what I have going on that weekend, but I'll try to watch both days.
Sure.
The other thing is, since we were here last, our great son of Cleveland, or son of Ohio, is now in a new town for basketball.
Yeah.
I know you had said before it was going to happen, you weren't going to be happy, but what are your final thoughts on what took place there?
I'm happy for him. I mean, like I said beforehand, I'm more of a fan of players than teams. And if he was going to, I wanted him to stay, but if he was going to leave, I don't think it changes my thoughts on the player himself. I think he was great when he was in Cleveland. Thought he was great when he was in Miami. I think he's going to be great when he's in Los Angeles. I wish he had stayed, because again, what else do we really have in Ohio now to really root for? So there's that.
Bengals.
So we've got Bengals, and but otherwise it's
now, what about the rumors now? And I'm sure they're just rumors started by who knows. But what about the Black Mamba coming out of maybe retirement so he could play with LeBron? What would
who knows?
Come on, what? Who knows? But I've seen crazier things.
Right, but I don't know. I mean,
do you think just LeBron signing with the Lakers has made them one of the top 4 teams as far as odds go to win the championship next year? I mean, one player, a team that hadn't been in the playoffs in 4 or 5 years, now, is one of the teams that they're, the odds makers should make it. Do you think if they had Kobe on the team, would that even make them a better chance? Do you think an old Kobe giving him 15 minutes of playing time would be a benefit?
I think so, because basketball is one of those sports where you're not really putting a ton of pressure on your body. I mean, it's a lot of, it's a lot of endurance. But again, if you, like you just said, if he's coming off for 15 minutes a game,
and he's only been out 2 seasons, right? Isn't it just 2 seasons?
Hasn't been gone that long. So I mean, I don't think it would take too much for him to get back into
financially, he could do it for a league minimum and not care.
Oh, yeah.
So it definitely gives the Lakers. I don't know. I found it. I didn't even think about it until I saw somebody else bring it up. I think a tweet or something like that. I went, that would be kind of cool. I don't know, would make me watch them even more. Not that I won't watch the Lakers now a little more because LeBron's on the team, but
sure,
the 2 of them on the court together, just because Kobe never was very good at sharing, but I do think he has enough respect for LeBron's game that he could come, and I think that would be the only player he could come back and say, okay, it's your team. I'll just come out here and give you my 15, 20 minutes. And let's see if we can't get a ring together.
That'd be kind of.
I could see it happening.
It'd be interesting, but I guess the only reason why I don't think that's going to happen is I thought I'd read a report or I'd seen an article or something like that where Kobe's been kind of a critic of LeBron because he was the one that pretty much started the whole super teams thing. So Kobe was more of because he was such a ball hawk.
Like the Lakers didn't have Kobe and then go get Shaq and back in the day they didn't have they traded up to get Magic and they already had the Lakers
with you.
In the NBA. In the NBA, that's been a pretty common thing for 30 or 40 years. These super teams.
Oh yeah, I mean without a doubt. But he seemed to be of the mindset that this was all LeBron's thing and that he won it on his own. So I guess
all say that shit. They all say that when it's not their team.
I'd be surprised if he went and did that after making those comments. But still, I think it'd be fun to watch if he did it because they're talking about having.
I think it would be good for the NBA.
Oh yeah.
So. Anything else in the sports world before we move to a little bit of fantasy talk here? So we've gone over an hour and not talked any fantasy.
Nothing else I can
those are the big things. The NBA signing, the Wimbledon's going on, so that's kind of neat.
So I've got one in sports. Does poker count as sports?
No,
absolutely.
But go ahead.
Have you heard about
poker is not a sport?
Well, the World Series of Poker is going on right now. It's kind of a big thing in poker.
Okay. Yeah, is the woman still in is she still in first?
Who?
There was some woman that I heard that she was the chip leader at one point. I saw it was yesterday. I thought she was the chip leader.
So is this the main event we're talking about?
Yeah, the main.
Go any further?
Yeah.
So this is a $10,000 buy-in. Probably pay out what 10, 12 million.
I don't know if it's that much anymore.
I forget what the payout is now.
10 million. When I think was it Jamie Gold that won the biggest one ever?
Yeah, his was the greatest.
Yeah, but there's been a couple controversies. I don't want to talk about too many, but of course the biggest name in poker when it comes to being a crybaby, Phil Hellmuth, was in the news. Did you hear about what he did?
Nope.
Or what he did?
No, that's ought to be good.
So I can play you a little video of what he did and get your all's opinion if we have time. If not, we can move forward. Or I can give you a quick synopsis. All right.
Go ahead.
All right. Let me see if I can do this.
Do you need us to let you have
I'm working on it.
Set something up? Well, I can. There we go. All right.
See it?
Yeah, I can see. Right. I see the flop.
Okay. So 3-way pot. The guy in the hoodie, in the black hoodie, Phil
Who's
Hellmuth, and this, I believe, another guy, one of the gray shirts. The bottom line is Phil Hellmuth is in the middle to act of what the action is going to go. So I'll continue to play the clip.
But just, can you pause it? Just so I know, is this the final table? I mean, is this also the final event, or is this some
like
other smaller event?
It's like
Pardon?
day 1 or 2.
Day 1 or 2. Okay. So, and this just happens to be a TV table or table off of
I watch poker
Twitch
go.
or something like that. All right. Okay. And obviously you can see the hands there on the left. All right. So we have 2 flush draws out there, and Phil Hellmuth actually is still in the lead with a pair of 7s. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So Phil just min raised the continuation bet, or so this guy just ships it with the ace-9 suited.
Okay. Okay. You know that because you can hear something, because I just see him taking 1 stack right at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe you guys can't hear the audio. So King Deuce bet. Phil Hellmuth min raised him to 6,000.
Okay.
Then ace-9 of diamonds just went all in.
Okay. All right. Which is what he's doing now. He's put his first stack. I'm assuming he's going to grab the second stack.
And I hope you can hear the audio.
I can't.
I can't.
I mean, Hellmuth being Hellmuth, I don't hear anything, but I know he's...
You, Chris?
No, I can't hear it. What's he saying?
So Phil Hellmuth just said, "This motherfucker," and goes on a rant.
That's Phil.
Deuce hasn't got to chance to make up his mind on what he wants to do.
And that's the guy in the hoodie to his right.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a big deal because Phil Hellmuth just basically exposed his hand.
Yeah.
Which is clearly against WSOP.
Okay. But at the same time, did Phil forget the guy was in the hand? That's to me where that's where a dealer has to say, "Sir, there's someone first act," or something.
Phil later apologized on Twitter saying, "I'm sorry that I cursed at the table."
So that's all he said. That's all
he knew he is not apologetic for what he had did other than cursing.
Okay.
The point I'm trying to make
out of turn.
The point I'm trying to make, and the reason why it's a big deal, is Phil basically just let the guy know what he had. So King Deuce now looks a lot better because Phil Hellmuth is probably going to fold. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Well, it's an assumption still, but I understand what you're saying.
Bottom line is he clearly broke WSOP rule, however you say it, WSOP rules.
Because it influenced his decision.
Because he's Phil Hellmuth and he's famous, he didn't even get a penalty for it.
Okay.
Oh, no shit.
I don't think there should have been a penalty.
Well, I wish you could hear the audio because even the announcers say what he just did is dead wrong.
He's wrong. I'm not arguing that it's not wrong.
You take a player like that who
just acted out turn because he forgot the other guy was in the hand. Shit happens.
You berate players for Phil Hellmuth berates players for playing poorly, for having poor etiquette at the table, and he didn't angle shoot because it didn't benefit him. He was going to fold anyway. But long story short, the guy who had King Deuce called. And the guy who had ace, and Phil Hellmuth folded, and he caught a deuce on the turn and busted the guy who had King 9 of diamonds. Spoiler.
So the flush never caught, and if Phil would have called it, he'd have won the hand.
Phil Hellmuth would have won the hand. The whole controversy is Phil Hellmuth basically announced the value of his hand.
Well, he didn't. I'll go hear the audio, but based on what you're telling me, he never once said, "I have a pair. You can't fucking raise that."
He basically said, "You motherfucker," and berated the fact that he was basically going to fold because that guy went all in. I'm not a poker genius. And I know when a player does it, I know he's folding. He's pissed off because he's got a middle pair. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scholar to know he's folding, and he's
but it doesn't take a rocket expert or a rocket scientist to realize that he forgot someone else was in the hand.
No, it doesn't. He knew exactly who was in the hand because he was waiting for the player to act. Well, why would you wait for a player to act if you instead of you just muck your cards?
As soon as the guy pushed all in, he got pissed. He had forgotten that it wasn't his turn to act. I don't have a problem with it.
The guy just acted. I mean, there was just an action behind him not 2 minutes ago. How do you forget in 2 minutes that there's somebody to your right?
If it wasn't live, we don't know how many minutes it was. Right.
He announced raised and min raised the guy who he now doesn't know is in the hand. So he knew exactly who was in the hand.
Regardless if it was live or not, it wasn't an hour.
Yeah.
My point is, what would the penalty be? It sits out for 20 minutes and 2 hands go by. I mean,
the rules directly
poker penalties aren't bullshit anyway.
The rules are, unless you're heads up, you cannot announce to anyone if you're
okay. That's the rule. What's the penalty? The penalties are you lose 20 minutes. So what? I mean, you don't lose your cards, you don't lose your chips, they don't kick you out of the Poker Hall of Fame.
Well, there was another controversy where a guy who through a racial slur basically got booted from the WSOP for life.
Okay. That might be different. I think if racial is probably to be different, but even that, it's poker.
But he defends. He's from another country. His first language is not English, and he did not understand the magnitude of what he said.
All right. Well, we're going to go to something else.
Yeah,
similar.
So my point is, how do you judge that? If a guy truly doesn't know, because it'd be like me if I went to someplace that spoke French and I barely knew the language, and I said something that was completely wrong. I don't necessarily know I'm saying it wrong because I don't speak French.
Well, that would be my thing. I would have trouble. I agree with that. I mean, to me,
but you
did they kick him? Did they take his money and kick him out of the table? What did he get to finish the tournament?
No. Nope.
Huh. Well, okay. Now we're going to stay on poker. And this is going to be odd because I wasn't there, but I've heard the story a couple of different ways from people involved. We have a local illegal poker thing up north. Where they play a poker game every Friday night. And here's how the story first comes to me. It's the gentleman who's in the hand is my son's best friend. My son comes home on Saturday and says, so-and-so's father got in a fight last night. I said, what? It's like a 48-year-old man. I said, he did what? Yeah. He said, at the poker game, they got in a little scrap. And I said, over what? And then my son only knew some basic stuff, but long story short, somebody was cheating.
Cheating
is what that's all my son knows. Is all he goes is so-and-so said he was cheating. And then, it escalated from there. They're playing at an American Legion. So there's alcohol involved. It's one of these where it's a $30, $40 buy-in. I understand that night there was maybe 50 players. They were down to about 20. It wasn't even, so I thought nothing more about it other than I'm like, I don't know. I just have a weird thing about 40-year-old people fighting. I don't know. Just seems stupid to me, but, now really come to find out the scrapping part was minimal. So, but here's where I get involved. The next weekend, this my son's friend is turning 21. We go to a bar. They're having a party. His dad had already left, but his wife is still there, and I know him fairly well. They're friends of the family, and we're just chatting, blah blah blah, and I'm eating, drinking, and then something got said, and then I said, yeah, I looked at her, I said, yeah, I heard your husband, and I just said by his name. I said, so I heard he got in a little brawl the other day at the poker thing. And, she goes, yes. And again, now I'm going to hear her side of the story, which she describes, and here's where, unfortunately, I get involved. Being a poker person and a dealer at one point and all that, I do know rules a little more than the average person. So here, she now tells me what happens. It's a pretty big hand. And somebody, the guy who, is involved with him in the fight, mucks his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Then realizes he caught a straight that he didn't see.
Correct.
So, okay. But so then she said, he then, said, I didn't mean to muck. I got that. And then the dealer did not see that he mucked him. So the dealer shipped him the chips because he had the winning hand. And the guy I know goes ape shit because he mucked his hand and didn't. So obviously the first thing I asked her, but she doesn't really know the answer, is did he muck? which technically you don't muck unless your cards touch the other
Chips or
cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, did he muck or did he just verbally say he mucked? Because I know in Texas Hold'em, cards read themselves. Well, me being an idiot, I had to say that to her. I said, so I mean, if any of that happened, then he didn't cheat, you know, and blah, blah, blah. Well, she says, no, I know he would have never started a fight if it really wasn't cheating and blah, blah, blah. And, so, it is back to, do you guys always play where the cards read themselves? And I've never played where verbal muck technically counted, meaning you could flip, you go, fuck, I'd fold that, or I'm. So the word muck doesn't usually come out of somebody's mouth.
My only question would be, did he were all bets called going to the river to where they got to showdown? Did that happen?
See, that's the point. She didn't know enough of that.
My point is,
she knew enough to explain to me where I know enough now to know I'm not sure that the buddy I know started a fight without really even knowing the rules himself. You know what I'm saying?
Alcohol.
Because I've been to a casino. I've truly been to a casino. We both turned over our hands. The dealer goes, he's got a flush, and truly pushed me the chips. Started bringing cards in, and another player goes, that guy has a straight flush. The guy made a 1-card straight flush who had pocket 4s. I remember this because they gave the guy the bad beat jack prize money, a hat, and the whole fucking thing. When the dealer truly shoved me the chips my way, I actually started putting them in my stack. They called the pit boss out. They go, no, he won the hand. He had the best hand. He turned his cards over. I said, but the dealer pushed my 3 best winning cards up and shoved me the pot. What do you want me to do? And they said, he won the hand. You need to put the chips back. And truly, I was, like I said, and they were in my hands when another player at the table.
Right. Because the cards,
he's got a straight flush
himself.
Wow.
Because that's why ever since that day, because a lot of times emotions get into effect. When it gets to showdown, I always turn my cards over because it's happened to me before. Yeah. I had a dealer call me out one day and goes, I had something and a guy caught something stupid. And I was so pissed that he caught his card. I didn't realize I caught a 4-card flush. I didn't even see it. I was so mad that he gut shot straight at me on the river that I didn't even see the flush. And then the dealer just goes, oh, he's got the best hand. My point is, when you are in showdown, your emotions and you're drinking alcohol, don't say I fold, don't muck, just turn your fucking cards over. You're playing when you're playing, especially live, it's such a short hand history. Look like a schmuck. Just show your cards. Don't even say fold. Don't just turn your fucking cards over. You got to showdown. Who bet, called, forget all that. I've played
a lot of live poker.
I'm not let the dealer and the other players push the pot the right direction. To me, that's the guy who said I fold or muck or whatever. As long as they went to showdown, that's his biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. Now here, as they did
the rules
are poker
cards.
Live poker, I don't think I've ever heard anyone yell. The word muck doesn't come out of a poker player. No one goes, I'm just mucking.
Fold.
Most players don't say that. They just say, I fold. My thing would be, and here's where is it when I used to deal was where it's a little odd. If there was a lot of cards in the thing, you never wanted, and I would tell anybody and and you would tell it that people just turn your cards over in front of you. But every once in a while you would get someone that would go, yes, they'd throw their 2 cards face up, meaning, yes, I caught that. And it would touch the muck. And some people would go, that means he mucked. To me, that's a little vague. I think real rules technically do say that, but he just was excited and threw him over. And then, on the felt, they move a little bit and they touch. As a dealer, they tried to tell us, try to control that muck pot a little bit so that, those cards aren't out there easily getting touched.
I mean, but you've seen on
cards read themselves. If you have better cards, you win.
You've seen on ESPN where Phil Hellmuth, you see it where he had that legendary hand. He had a flush. He didn't know it. And he truly mucked his cards. Didn't even know he had the best hand. My biggest thing would
but the cards don't read themselves in that case because he didn't flip them over.
And that's my point. Yeah. My point would be if there was any fault, it should be 2 things. One, if you got to showdown, just turn your fucking cards over. I don't care. Even if you win 100%, just turn your cards over because back to you getting the argument, you bet last, show on, show all, blah, blah, you get into all those arguments. If it goes to showdown, both players should just turn their cards over unless you were on a stone cold bluff and you just say, I was bluffing, and you just throw them in the middle and back to you throw them to where they touch chips. It doesn't matter. You never know when a stone cold bluff actually could have made a flush. I've had it happen. To me, like I said,
And that's
personally, it
usually
goes
what
both
it is.
ways.
It's usually when you're chasing a straight and you got the flush or vice versa. That's where you get in trouble. You were hoping to get a flush and you didn't even pay attention that you hit a straight.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
That's my point. I would say if there was any fault, back to if they went to show, and that would be my biggest question. Did they go to showdown? If they went to showdown, where truly, all bets were called, there were no more cards to come, nothing.
50-year-old people scrapping a little bit over a card game. You know what? If you guys saw he had the winning hand, he had the winning hand. It's not cheating. He did not cheat. The word cheat should never come out of his hand. No, he did not cheat.
No.
He must have told me the story, now a couple times. And the word he believes 100% the guy cheated. He didn't cheat. If worst case he did, he made a bad judgment.
Correct.
And maybe he threw his cards. But to me, no one would have known he caught the straight if they weren't upside right. They had to be obviously where everyone could see him, or you wouldn't even known that. But
that's why whenever I'm at a live, like say when I'm at a cash game at a casino. When a player mucks in that spot, I always put a chip on top of my hole cards for the tip for the dealer and swipe them to the dealer. That way, if anyone was to go, hey, he had this or he had that, I can go, my cards are right fucking there. I put a chip on it to contest if the dealer needs to turn them over. Those are my cards. Now, I will admit, if it was a stone cold bluff that got through, those are the times where I just slide my cards in and thank you for the chips. Because like I said, but because sometimes you'll just say you got it and people will fold and they'll never even let you even show showdown. And that's where, like I said, I truly wait every time for the dealer to pull the cards in and shove me the chips. That way,
well, my argument is right. My only point is people 50 years old at a low dollar poker tournament.
Let it go, man.
And not only are you scrapping, I really believe what I've heard of the story now. He was scrapping and he was the one in the wrong. If not in the wrong, he at least it wasn't as bad of a thing as what he thought it was.
Yeah, he overblew it.
If that were me at the table, I'd go, really? You said fold. You mucked your cards. You misread your hand. You really want the chips because you misread your hand.
This guy said
yes. And then back to if he goes, no, I really had the best hand. They want to pull the rules. I just say, can we call a floorman? Let someone. Well, I always
They called
someone
the tournament
else needs to come in and make a ruling because I think you mucked.
Tournament director said,
say it. Someone else, and then if that's once we ask that third person to come in, then their rule's the rule. Whether I agree, disagree, anything else, I just go, well, you know what? House, no different than pool because I shoot a lot of pool. Whatever the rules are, I abide by them. You say he's got the hand, then it is what it is.
The dealer said, I did not see him muck the cards.
Yep.
And he had the winning hand. And the tournament director said, okay. I mean, if the dealer said he didn't see that he mucked them and he showed the winning hand, he has the winning hand. So
100% he did not cheat.
I mean, because to me, verbally, even if he said I muck them, but he flipped them up and they were the winning hand. Cards in Texas Hold'em anyway, the cards read themselves.
Yeah.
Meaning, you can say I fold, you can say whatever you want, but if you flip them over, you have the winning hand. You have the winning hand. I don't care. Yeah. I mean, that's the way it works.
If it was on the turn, that's another story. My point is once all bets are completed, the cards do speak for themselves. Up to that,
that's correct. And I think that was the deal. I think,
on the turn,
two different people were all in, if I don't mistake.
If on the turn, even if a guy verbally says, I fold, the hand's dead to me. It's over.
Right.
But once all bets are completed, then it sucks, but it is what it is.
All right. Chris, it's mock draft season.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted your quick opinion because we don't have much time now. What's your opinion of using the mock draft sites where they're driven by ADPs and experts and all that stuff versus mock drafts that you do with real people, like at your ESPN sites, your Yahoo sites, and those? Do you partake in both of those type things to learn different things, or do you not use either, or do you prefer just the one that's based on random / ADP?
I like all of them. I mean, if you can get a chance to draft against experts versus normal people, I think both will give you an idea of, I think when you draft with normal people, that will pretty much tell you what the market says about each of the players.
Except normal people in a draft that doesn't matter do stupid things.
Yeah, they do, and that again, but that's what the market reflects. I mean, the market will reflect that. I'd say most of the time that the market will tell you that some people will value Golden Tate over Marvin Jones, but then if you do it with a bunch of experts will look and say that I prefer Marvin Jones over Golden Tate, something like that. Where but also when it comes to drafting with I guess quote unquote regular people or just with non-experts or fans. You also fall into the other thing that you don't necessarily see when you draft with experts. You see these runs, the positional runs, like where all of a sudden you'll have a string of quarterbacks taken, you'll see a string of tight ends taken, running backs or whatever. And you don't always get that when it comes to fantasy experts because they always preach the, zig while other people are zagging. They'll look at positional tiers, things of that nature. So I think there is some value when it comes to drafting either way because it allows you to get a feel for the draft, find out player positional value, and also teaches you how to adjust to the draft as it unfolds because you can walk in to a draft with a particular strategy in mind, and then things don't start to really go that way because you don't get the players that you were searching for in order to fit that strategy, and you have to adjust mid draft, and that can happen. And with those positional runs, like if you see a string of quarterbacks start getting taken in the 7th, 8th, 9th round, are you going to be scrambling for one, or do you know of a late round quarterback that you can take in the 10th, 11th, or 12th? That you can wait on and maybe build some depth, add a couple more players, add that late round running back that you were looking for. So I think there's some value to go both ways when it comes to doing mocks.
Okay, and we kind of talked before the show a little bit about, some of the expert, when they do their mock drafts or the experts when they do their free expert leagues. I don't put a lot of I find it interesting because I listen to all that stuff and I think it's all interesting. I don't think you can listen to enough fantasy stuff in some cases like poker. I don't think you can not read or watch or listen to enough experts in poker
100%.
to just help put it in your mind. But like I said, I have watched and seen, and even, I listen enough that, even the expert will tell you, I just did that. I would recommend you did it. I just did it because, they might not admit 100% that the reason they do it, they like to do, and I use the word crazy things when they're drafting and things like that, so that if it works out, they can say, I was the expert that knew that, I was the expert that got that right. When, okay, you got lucky. The odds are you're going to be right. It's back to poker. You can make the wrong decision and still get it and still win the pot, or you can make a couple wrong decisions and maybe still win a tournament. That doesn't mean you played well.
Right.
And I see that a lot in, some of these fantasy mock drafts / and you'll hear them even say, well, in this draft, I'm taking a couple quarterbacks easy this early just to see. But then in the real drafts, they would never do that, those type things. So you got to kind of watch it and pay attention. And, it's hard to practice nothing. And I've done it. I'll like we've had that conversation. I'll do hundreds of mock drafts based on my home league settings. And then I'll get to the draft, and very rarely do I ever draft like I did in any of those mock drafts. It's just once you're there and things start getting a little,
heart starts racing a little bit. You see folks are rocking around you,
and things happen that you don't expect. Even a mock draft couldn't calculate it.
Exactly.
So I just was curious if you do both. Are you mock drafting much at this point?
I just did. Actually, while I was on vacation, I did an expert mock draft with
real people.
Yeah, with the folks over at there were some writers from Fantrax. There was a couple of writers from Roto Grinders, and actually the Podfather himself, Matt Kelly, he participated in it. So we had a few well-known industry writers that were part of it. So it was so that was different because then it's really tough because you are going off of your own projections, and then you didn't really see the positional runs because everyone's looking for value every single pick.
But Joey, I mean, mock drafting, Joey, just, I don't know if you know, in fantasy is more or less practice. It's like poker. It's like playing, or, if you get let's say you get the same 8 guys together that you play poker with them, and they say, hey, tonight, let's don't play for money. Let's just practice. Would you ever practice poker, Joey?
No, but there's simulators out there where you can put hands in.
Right, and you can play weird stuff just to see.
Through a simulator, you can give your players a projected range, and it'll give you the right technique. You know, with unknown information, it'll populate results.
Right. But like I said, mock drafting's pretty big. I'm doing it all. Chris, another couple. Actually, we only got a few more minutes. The other thing is, I had my league of record, my main home league. We had our summer meeting. We set our draft order.
Nice.
We put the ping pong balls in the flip flopper. Unfortunately, because I went to the Super Bowl, I didn't have very many balls, so I had the 11th pick. To determine where I got to draft. So that means everyone picked their spots. So when it was my turn, did I do the right thing? When it was my turn, I could be pick 7 or I could be pick 12.
Take 12.
Okay. I must have done it. I mean, if I got your pat on the back, I must have done it right. Because that's exactly what I did. I didn't even hesitate.
There you go.
I went into this thing. I went into this thinking I wanted to be 1 through 3 or 11 or 12. That was kind of what my goal was here. Now, the nice thing about that is I can start mock drafting now, knowing I'm picking 12.
Yep.
We have 2 keepers. So unfortunately, we decided it's our first year. We decided to do keepers last year, but this is the first year we have keepers. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is the first year. So we have decided, wrong or right, we've never really done it. We decided we were not going to declare our keepers until draft time. So when we get to the draft, we can declare our keepers before the draft and be done. So I found that interesting. I've spent more time now looking at everybody's rosters and trying to determine who they're going to keep so that I can draft with different keepers and all that.
Interesting.
And here was the other thing, and I think I already told you this. One of my keeper options was Gronk.
Okay.
And I can keep Gronk in the 3rd.
Okay.
Which I didn't really – if I was picking 1st through 3rd, I don't think I would have kept him as of right now as one of my keepers because that means I would have taken him early in the 3rd. Which right now is where he's going.
Mm-hmm.
Picking 12th means I'm the last pick in the 3rd. So now that means I'm going to get Gronk at pick 312, which now that's some value. I'm now getting him about 8 picks later than he would go for. And there are some mocks where he's going in the 2nd. And I really think closer to the season, if things don't change and with the
price is going to go up.
I do. Right. So I think right now he's one of my keepers. The other one I think is Funches. I can keep Funches in the 11th. I don't have too many. The problem is I dropped a lot of people that could have been keepers on my team because I made it to the Super Bowl. I had to do a lot of weird things in the playoffs to keep players out of someone else's hand. And so those are my only what I would call real player keepers. The only other decent keeper, and the word that is hard for me to say, and that's I can keep the number 1 defense from last year, the Jaguars. I can keep them in the 16th. But it's in the 16th. I agree. But in most mock drafts, they're going in the 10th and the 11th and the 12th round.
Right.
And they were in the top 10 scoring overall, not just in defenses. They were in the top 10 of scoring in our league last year. I mean, they were scoring me 30 points almost every week.
Yeah, but that has never been repeated. Like there has been never a case where unit has been able to repeat that type of performance in fantasy scoring.
But here's my argument. Let's say something happens and Gronk's value never changes and I can always draft Gronk in the middle of the 3rd, meaning I could give him up and then obviously draft a different tight end, maybe even later in the draft. Because if I don't have Gronk in the 3rd, I'm probably not going to draft the tight end until the 10th round.
Sure.
But so you're saying even then you would rather just draft another player than take the Jaguars in the 16th. Which is still 3 or 4 rounds behind where they're going in most mock drafts.
Yes, regardless of the difference in where you drafted them at, depending on the week, I'm willing to bet that I could find a defense off the waiver wire that could do just.
And I'm not arguing that. We draft on Sunday before the season starts. So the Jaguars. I mean, it's not like I can. I have to pick a defense because I've got them playing that way. It's not like I got 2 weeks to move things around. So that was my only choice, but
depending on how the draft falls, you could probably stream the Bengals defense and go against Andrew Luck coming off of what, a 2-year hiatus.
I'm not saying I haven't thought of that, especially because I'm going to be at that game.
Exactly.
I'm going to be at that game. I can root for my Bengals.
Yeah,
so.
And like it's not like they're on the road, but it's not like it's going to be that far indoors.
Right.
I mean, week 1.
I know. Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
Absolutely.
All right. As of right now, Gronk is my keeper and Funches is my keeper. So
that sounds good. I think it sounds solid.
We'll go that way and drop into the 12th. I'm struggling to get any decent running backs. A couple times Barkley has fallen that low, but that's been kind of rare. It's pretty much wide receivers and stuff at that point to me that are number 1 round. That's kind of nice. I get the 12th, the 12th pick, and then obviously the 13th. So I get, a lot of mock drafts. It seems like my big choice is, Keenan Allen, Julio Jones.
Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas.
See, and right now I've been starting that way. I've been starting Thomas and Keenan Allen, or Odell Beckham has fallen that low a few times.
Yeah, I've seen him.
To me, those are two players that technically could end the season in the top, top round type thing. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, we don't have much time now. We've gone a little over an hour and a half, but we will start getting into more fantasy talk here in the next few weeks. Even to the point where that's what the shows will be 100%. And, we'll just leave Joey out of those. We'll drink a beer at the beginning and we'll go from there. So
exactly.
We still need to get him in a league, see if he can learn it. I know he would just try to find someone to do it for him because he's too lazy to,
plus EV
to even pay attention to what we're telling him.
Yeah.
So, Chris, let people know what you're doing, where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX.
All right. Any articles? Have you done anything lately on any of the
since
sites?
I took the week off, no, I've got one coming up here with for 4 for 4. That's going to be actually my first weather article. I haven't actually written one. This one's more in-depth research on how weather impacts fantasy football games. It's kind of how I got known in the industry. So this is going to be my big one for 4 for 4. It's going to be like a 3-part series. I should have the first part done within the next couple of days, I'm hoping. So maybe it might get published this week.
Well, we'll have to discuss it one day. So let me know. Send me the article. Let me know where the article's at. We'll read it, then we'll discuss whether the weather has anything to do with the weather or not.
Will do. Oh, yeah.
Joey, where can people find you?
People can find me at HBYOB.com. We have a store here in the Dayton, Ohio area. I just want to say before I get off, for the money, I usually don't talk money. This was a fantastic beer. $9.99 for a New England IPA. I would say I almost got like a Cascade hop flavor and aroma from it, but for the price, this was $9.99 for a 4-pack of 16 ounces. Highly recommend it.
Cool.
I think mine was $9.99 too for my 4 Rattlers 16. I would recommend it also. I'm Easy Kill. You can find me on Twitter, Easy Kill at a fantasy fan. Join us again next week. Like I said, I think we got one more combo show to go where we definitely blew up the pork and the brewing this time. I know the last couple shows we kind of, ignored those a little bit. This week we went off on them. So, so who knows what we'll talk about next week, but I had a good time. I appreciate y'all coming out. Everybody just say goodnight.